All right. So, hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining. This is Business Planning 101 and sort of a crash course that we're going to take the next hour, if it takes us that long, to get through just the fundamentals. Here's what I'm looking for. Anytime I coach somebody, if I sit down with somebody the first time and they say, hey, I want advice on a business plan, or I want you to coach me to launch this business concept, this is what I'll tell them. And so you guys are getting this in probably one of the more systematized formats because we need to get it into an hour that I think I've ever presented this in. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And really, just like Mike said, this is about engaging with all of you. I want you to think about your idea, your concept, and just have a notebook, start brainstorming on these topics. Make sure that you're really an active listener here, and that you're getting the most out of the ideas as they're coming off, right? So, my goal anytime I'm listening to something like this, is pretty high paced, is just make sure that that you're really just leaning in. So, let's see here, Mike. Okay, awesome. So, oops, I'm going to go back one. All right. Mike, can I make that smaller here?
Yeah, just exit out.
Okay, great. All right. So what is business planning? And really, in a very, very simple manner, what you're doing now in taking an idea or a concept is translating that into really one of two things. In business, you always have one of two problems or opportunities. And those lie either in people or in systems. And so you can always ask yourself, you get into business 5 years, 50 years, you can always ask yourself, do I have a problem with people, or do I have a problem with systems? Do I have a need for more people or different people, for talent, or do I have a need for systems, for ops, for something, for a tangible that's non-human, right? Maybe a tool that somebody can use. So with those two things, if you ask those questions, those basic questions to yourself, do I have a people or a systems issue right now? It's going to lead to great growth. And so everything that you're going to be thinking about is just a question of those two things, right? I need to raise money. Do I have a systems problem or a people problem? You probably have a people problem. You need the right relationships. I need to build a sales force. Do I have a systems issue or a person issue? You probably have a people issue. And the other rule of thumb that I'll tell you that I found is that usually you have a people issue, you have a talent issue, not a systems issue. Oftentimes people are going to innovate systems faster than you can, are going to find better systems than you can, especially when they're the right people on the bus. And this is going to lead to tremendous growth. And so in a nutshell, what you're putting together is a question of who and what you need in order to get to where you need to go. Okay, so that's really what putting together a business plan is all about. Oh, Mike, there we go. Good thing you're here, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right,
so contribute.
Yeah. So the part of the reason why I have Mike here is because he's much better with technology than I am, being, what are you, 12 years younger than me?
Yeah, a few.
It's amazing.
A couple years younger than me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
And the other reason is because Mike in our organizations serves as CFO and really the ops guy, COO, where I'm more on the visionary side, really focused on mission, vision, big goals, motivation, that sort of stuff, and casting sort of the big why behind things. And Mike is getting the how and the what done. So between the two of us, there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to be able to answer that as a team that just one of us wouldn't be able to answer. So it's going to kind of round out any organization. And Mike's a great example of a who that took the business to a different level, right? By having the right CFO who I trusted implicitly, happens to be my brother, the right person to look up, what systems we need to put in place, what operational efficiencies we can find. we were able to take the business to a whole new level, and that's accelerating our growth even more now as we learn to work really, really well together. So glad to have you here, Mike. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on.
Okay, so let's talk about sort of the big picture, right? Starting with a mission, vision, and core values, sort of core beliefs, sometimes they're called. And the questions you want to ask yourself are, okay, well, why do you want to do this? And that's a legitimate question. If your answer is purely monetary, you may end up lacking motivation 18 months into this endeavor. Right? Certain people are more motivated by money than others, but if it's a purely monetary question, I think you need to keep asking why. So really digging into this. Once you have clarity on why you want to jump into something, into a field, then really it animates your hiring process. It animates the team behind you. It serves as a beacon for whether you're on track or not. Mike, for you and I, knowing why we do what we do has helped us cut on spending, right? Yeah. And we ask ourselves, so does this expenditure align with our mission, with our vision for what we want to do, right? So mission vision can sound really soft, but it's fundamental because it helps align all of your decisions after this. It is really the first domino of making great decisions in your business.
Yeah, and I would say that it's definitely different than a slogan.
Right? Definitely different.
It's not something that it's a real working concept, right? That informs many of the decisions or all of the decisions you make about the company. It's not just a tagline or a slogan or a PR thing. Yeah, it's very much, it very much is, the hashing out of who you are and why you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to bring in somebody somebody who's really talented from another industry who you really can't wait to be in business with, because that's the type of talent you need to accelerate your growth, to grow the company, what are you going to tell them? And why should they move? Why should they leave their really high-paying job in another place where they're perfectly happy, great benefits, all of this, to take a risk on your startup? And the why has to be really, not only really big, but also really compelling. And it sure as heck had better get you out of bed in the morning. So this mission, vision, core values, you know what? Keep it internal. Think about this as an internal heartbeat of your business. And you need to ask yourself, so why does it matter to me? But also, why does it matter to people out externally, to people outside of the company, right? Who is it going to affect? When we believe these things and we execute on that belief on a daily basis, who is it going to affect, and how is that? What is that going to look like, right? I like this one,
and not just your customers, right? How does it have an outsized effect on the entire industry that you're in, or your community, or the entire world? Right?
Absolutely. How does it affect? We talk about this all the time. We're a small company, and frankly, part of the mission of the company is to be a great benefit to our children, because we believe that the business should serve as a platform for our kids to learn from as well, to learn about life, how to interact with other human beings, how to innovate, how to develop great virtues, right? And in some ways we learn that through our father's business. And so we believe that's a firm sort of core belief. And so moving into sort of core beliefs, core values, one of the things we say is, well, could I bring my kids in here and have them learn from this environment? If they couldn't, then maybe something's off, right? And it's just a paradigm. It's sort of a lens that you look at the business through. And that's where the core beliefs become really, really helpful, I think. Right. So think about what lens allows you to see whether you're on track or not. Those are your core values, core beliefs, right? And it reorients you to the mission and vision of the company. So just for clarification's sake, when you talk about mission is where are we going? And it's a little bit more short term, right? It can be short term. You can have longer term visions, shorter term visions. Missions. And then vision is sort of, how do you perceive the world and why does it matter, right? And and what is the overarching theme of the why behind the company, right? I like to think of that as the big why, and that's how we think about it internally. All right. And then this bottom piece, I think, is really, really fundamental. I alluded to it before, but what type of people will you attract as part of the mission? And to me, again, if it doesn't resonate with people internally at a visceral level, then they may come over to the company. Let's say you had all the money in the world, you could afford whomever. They won't stay if the mission doesn't drive them, if the core beliefs are not something that they can aspire to and that they can view the company through.
Great.
So I was just searching online and looking through different corporate websites and some of their, mission, vision, core beliefs. And so check these out. Nordstrom, you've got some old school stuff, a lot of new school stuff. Mike, I see you threw in the Boring Company. I didn't even know about them. What are they?
The Boring Company is another one of Elon Musk's companies.
Yes. Okay.
The Boring that actually bore holes.
Yes.
In the underground. And I thought that it's a really unique mission. I mean, their mission is to alleviate traffic in cities around the world, starting with LA.
By going through instead of around.
Yeah, just
that's pretty cool.
By going deep. So that's a simple one, and I would reiterate that. I think there's a lot of companies who, especially in our startup environment, our startup age, who they have a really clear belief about why it is that they want to get into this. And some are super noble, and some of them are sort of base, but at the same, they're very clear about it, at least. Right?
Yeah. Well, and it gives direction. I think at the beginning of any project, of implementation of any project, you need a mission and a vision for things. And so it may be the vision that you have in the first 18 months or 5 years develops and matures, and that's okay. You don't have to have the just absolute clairvoyancy about exactly what it's going to look like. You're going to change as an individual, but and the company's definitely going to change, and the company that's successful is definitely going to change you as well. And so as a result of getting up and fighting towards this goal, this vision for what you want the company to become, really focusing on clear missions and goal setting, as a result of that mission and vision, you're going to move the company forward, and you're going to attract talent to it in a really neat way, and make great decisions about the systems that you're putting in place in order to get there as well. All right, so that's sort of some lofty stuff. Now let's talk about brass tacks. What are some of the first things you need to do in order to make sure that you're on the right path? The first thing is what internally we've coined guerrilla warfare. I can't remember where I first heard that. It's from another entrepreneur, but it's really getting out there and understanding your market. Who's your competition? Who can you sell it to? Why will they buy it? What's your market? What kind of opportunities exist in that market? Where are the niches that you can exploit, or that other people are trying to exploit? Who are your competitors, and who are the top three? Right? If they've become successful, there's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. So why is it that they're successful? You have to know that. What assets do they have? Did they have coming into it? And how do they exploit those? Maybe what assets are they not exploiting? What blind spots do they have? What weaknesses do they have in general? So you really want to do, we're going to get to this later, a sort of a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats on some of your competition, on the market, and then on yourself. We're going to get to the self-analysis later. But really understanding the market that you're getting into. What's the opportunity? How much revenue comes into the entire industry, and what share of that do you want?
Right. Yeah, and I think that what we're getting to the heart of is there a big enough opportunity for a sustainable business here? I mean, if there's not, move on to something else. Right? Yeah. And I think the second thing is that what will be your your new offering? What's your point of differentiation?
Sure.
Right. In a very saturated market where there are a lot of competitors, to be successful early on, you really have to have a compelling differentiating factor.
Sure.
Right. So the opportunity has to be there, and you have to be able to differentiate.
Yeah. So what's the current supply? What is demand currently, right? And how is it being consumed? What's your sort of absorption rate, if you will, of the supply that's being given to the demand in the marketplace? And so I'm really understanding that. This is where, your Econ 101, 102 really comes in handy to really analyze this sort of thing. And think about this: if you were to bring this to an investor and they're gonna invest into your project, well, they're gonna ask, are you creating a new market, or are you going into an established market? And if it's an established market, who do you have to fight against? And thirdly, is it a growing market or is it a shrinking market?
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge, right? And so you're gonna think about how you would pitch that. And really be very sober about that. Is it a declining market? Is the market being currently disrupted by something as well? Is technology altering the market that I'm going into currently? And what does that look like in 5 years as well? And there's a lot of markets that have that. You can see those symptoms going on that are being disrupted. Anything that can be disrupted right now in terms of industry is being disrupted. Where there's fat in an industry and inefficiencies, technology and really smart people who are programmers and working in Silicon Valley and places like that are going to disrupt those industries. So keep that in mind. Move to the next one, Mike. All right, so now taking that market analysis, understanding that market analysis and saying, okay, well, yes, I believe now because of the market and because of what my concept is, this probably has legs. So now what's my economic model? What am I selling? So being really clear about what you're selling and what you're not selling, right? Really, really understanding your product or your good or your service. One of the things I see a lot of entrepreneurs say is that, well, we're just going to kind of give everything that we can. So if people need this, we'll react that way. And so you end up selling a lot of stuff without clarity about how you want to become excellent, how you want to hone your craft, how you want to refine your processes. And there's very few companies that I know of that do a lot of stuff really, really well. They do a few things, 1-2 things with excellence, and it's usually one thing at first, and then they build sort of contiguous businesses, sequentially growing those businesses one after another, right? So what's the first domino? What are you selling first? Is it a good or a service? This is hard also because your desire may be, I want to change the world. Well, I'm going to do anything to change the world. And that means I'm going to sort of provide just about anything that's needed. Well, take a step back and understand that you're going to have to focus on becoming phenomenal at one thing right now. Once you understand what your product is and you've got it really honed in, now the question is, okay, what is it worth? What's it worth to people? And why is that the number? Be able to justify that. That's what, again, if you're looking at investors, that's what they're going to ask.
Right. And if you're entering into a market, just take a step back. If you're entering into a market where there's a pretty well-established willingness to pay for something, that everyone kind of hovers around the same price point, can you differentiate yourself so that you can charge a premium? Right?
Yes.
Is your differentiation something that people would be willing to pay for? Or is there just simply not that market?
Yeah.
Right. So it ties together with the differentiation point.
Yeah. Is your product a luxury product, or is it a more commoditized product? Are you, where do you fit into that market? So let's see here. Okay, so we're on how many do you have to sell to reach your goals? So really, this is just the pure math. Okay, in order to get to a certain number, right, of a revenue goal. Here's how much revenue we want to come in have come through the door. Excuse me. You have to, how many of these widgets do you have to sell? How many units do you have to to consult on, right? So understanding, and you can do this even if you're in a service industry, right? You got a lot of service providers don't think of the units so much, and you do have to do that in order to really project your goal. And then what's your projected year-over-year revenue? What's the goal? How are you going to get there? And seeing this really, really clearly. Now, I'll say on top of this, you really want to know, okay, what's the activity in order to generate the opportunity? And that brings us to lead generation, right? So think about economic model as what's going to get you really excited about the revenue side. And a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, get really excited about the revenue side. That's why I started there. And once you see that nice big number and you go, you know what, gosh, if I just had this extra avenue, then I'd be able to do, I'd be able to double that or triple that. That's where it starts to get really exciting. And this is where we start to talk about avenues. How are you going to make it rain? Lead generation and marketing, right? Mm-hmm. And these are two slightly different things. And we just interviewed, actually, we're going to interview formally some of the judges and I won't tell you which one, so you guys have to listen to the podcast. But we interviewed some of the judges for this giveaway for the scholarship, and their whole story is really, really cool. They've got a really big company and they do no marketing whatsoever. They're not marketing based. They're all relationship based. It's all about them going and meeting right with the most influential people they can in their marketplace and connecting with them and figuring how they can add value. And that's a very legitimate lead generation strategy. And that's one that they've done perhaps better than almost any company that I've spoken to in the last 6 months. And I'm really excited to have that podcast out there. It will probably be out next week. Mm-hmm. And so listen for that one. We've got 2 out already from some of the judges. We've got another one coming out here, our 3rd one in the series. So listen to that and listen for some clues there. But really, this is all about, okay, how am I going to go get clients? And what legal things are you not going to do to gain clients, right? A lot of people go, I'll do anything to make a sale. Well, then you're not going to be really focused, right? So part of this is just understanding yourself, mm-hmm. right? It may be industry standard currently to, for example, do cold calling in order to go get clients. Fine. Is that where your strengths are currently? And is that the only way to make client relationships come in the door?
Right.
So some of this is just knowing yourself. When you start out start a company, you're relying on your own talent to drive it forward. Oftentimes you don't have a whole lot of other people, maybe no one else, to drive this forward for you. So there can be tons of perfectly legal things that you could do, but you're going to say no to in order to go focus on mm-hmm. On the thing that's going to net you the quickest gain. And frankly, that you can imagine yourself doing for the next 3 years. There's one thing that I'll tell a lot of people right out of the gates is imagine doing that same type of lead generation every single day for the next 3 years. Could you do it? If so, keep going.
Yeah. No, I think it really does get to the heart of, and this is to your last point, Pat, is that if you are presenting a business model that has real differentiation, then that a big part of your differentiation could be in this lead generation and marketing model, right? Mm-hmm. So like, I'm going to be able to gain market share because I'm conveying a message. I'm carrying a message to my potential customer base in a different way.
Yeah.
So it ties, these all really, really tie in all the way back to what's my mission.
Absolutely.
It's very cool.
Thank you. So budget model, and this is where I'm going to let you take over, Mike, because you run our budget, and when you came on board, I think you cut our expenses in the first year by at least $20,000.
Yeah, and especially for the volume of business we're doing at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And things will change. And I think with the budget model, what's really interesting is that entrepreneurs typically will have a really, really fleshed out economic model.
It's more fun to think about revenue.
Yeah, and but it's harder to wrap their heads around a budget model, right? So what is everything going to cost?
Yep.
Right. And I also think that another factor that plays into sort of the unwillingness to go with a budget model or to think about it is because there's, in the startup world especially, many of them are not profitable for many, many, many years,
Yep.
right? And they just go through series of funding and funding and funding. And they don't have, their plan is not to be profitable right away. And a lot of their costs are just coming back and reinvesting, into the business to grow. So a couple of these points I'll hit on. What is the cost of doing business, right? So what's just off the bat, what is the cost of doing a sale, right? And then if you're able to do that sale, what are the costs of the talent that you have? What are you willing to pay people? How much does it cost to put them on payroll? What's going to be your employee versus contractor structure in your company?
Yep.
Lots of things to think about there, right? And then things cost, right? And I think this is important. It's important that you put people first and then you think about things, because business is about people in the end, right? Business is really about investing into people, and that includes your employees. That includes your partners or your contractors.
Absolutely.
So think about people first and what you need to do to hire really great people, and things second.
Yes.
Right? And then this is another one, fixed versus variable costs. And that ties into the cost of doing business or the cost of doing sale many times.
Yeah.
Right. Not all the time, but every time we, for instance, sell a home, right? We know that it's going to cost a certain amount to do that. We don't incur that cost unless we get the sale.
Absolutely.
But you have to understand that and how that will affect your profitability over the course of the year.
Sure.
What questions do you ask, right? So this ties back into the mission.
Yeah.
We alluded to this earlier. When you're looking at your income statement and you're looking at those expenses and you're looking at the vendors that you're paying, you have to ask, do these expenses that we're incurring tie back into our mission? If they're not in alignment with our mission, right? The way that we do business, the culture that we have here, then how do we reinvest those monies into another vendor that aligns better, or new talent for the team? Yeah.
And so just a quick example of that, because I think it's important to really drill down on this a little bit. For example, on our team, we will oftentimes ask the question in looking at a budget, does this allow us to invest more into our current talent? Right. Does this expenditure allow us to invest more into our current talent? And when you ask that, sometimes you realize actually what it's doing is it's covering up defects of people on the team, or it's covering up our inability to grit it out a little bit longer, right? Or it's kind of a shiny object. We're showing love with the possibility of this new marketing device or this new lead generation strategy that we're just willing to throw money at it.
Right.
Right. And so that's I just wanted to bring that that general example out. And if you ask that type of question, you may go, wow, I can cut a lot of stuff if it doesn't measure up to in our world, is it allowing us to invest well into the people that we've promised that we're going to take care of? Right. Because they're really talented people. It's not because they're just sort of laggards and they're hanging out. These are the people that we've committed to long term.
Yeah. And then this last one is really going into a startup business plan idea, right? You want to know, you want to have a projection of, okay, what's our real profit margin after we pay everybody out?
Yep.
What's going to happen over the course of this first year? Maybe maybe you're comfortable with, we're not going to make money on this for the next 3 years, right? We know that we have to invest into our product and our capabilities and our people before we're selling enough that it actually makes a profit, right?
Yep.
So if you're very clear that we're not going to make a profit on this for 3 years, but we can see where it's going to go, then you'll know how much money you need to raise to see you through those 3 years of non-profitability.
Absolutely.
Right?
And you end up coaching a lot of people on this, lots of different businesses, frankly. And there's so much intricacy to this, but these are the major things as you're putting together a business plan. You have to look at. There's all sorts of stuff in terms of taxes and employment and all sorts of things, all sorts of costs that will be specific to your industry to know and understand. So be aware of those things, have them researched, and just make sure that they play into your assumptions of what you're actually going to bring home, because guaranteed you're going to run across stuff that you did not expect to have to spend on. And so really honing these numbers in is super important. I want to walk, we've talked about talent. We've mentioned talent probably on every single slide, is because really most businesses have everything to do with getting the right people on the bus, and getting them into the right seats on that bus. So you could have perfectly phenomenal people on the bus in the wrong seats, and it'll drive them insane. Right. So really, really understanding who and why you want those people in certain buses, in certain seats on the bus. So when do you hire each position and in what order? Right. So if you don't have a plan for, who's my first hire and why, then you're going to hire typically out of pain. Right. And that's really, really, that's wildly detrimental. And I think a lot of people just go, well, I've got a lot of friends and they're going to want to help me out, so I'm sure we'll be able to just figure this thing out. And that will probably really hurt you. I've seen many, many more people make hiring mistakes than look like hiring savants, especially early on. And so this is a developed skill, the hiring process, understanding the hiring process. It's something you are going to have to fail at in many ways as you grow your business. But as you're putting together this business plan, you want to have some clarity as to who's going to be helping at what time and how that's going to affect your margins as well, going back to the budget model. So is your first hire administrative help so that you can go do what you're really, really great at? Is it finding a great partner? Is there a who's going to, help fund, but is going to be a silent person behind the scenes? Is there somebody who's not going to be hired, who is going to help you with legal stuff, and who you're going to exchange, something that you already do for their legal advice? Or do you have to pay that person out of pocket? And if so, where are you going to find that money? So there's a lot of who's that go into this. The who's who give you advice, sort of who serve as your maybe initially your makeshift board of directors, early on, and everyone all the way through to the person who is maybe a remote virtual assistant as well. So you've got a lot of people to think about, most likely in whatever business you're getting into. And so just really identifying those people. What I'm not looking for personally, is what's your hiring process, right? But that would be really cool if you have framed out, very clearly who you're looking for and what motivates them in each role. So if you have a sales force, what motivates them and generally who you're looking for. That's really important. And if you have an idea of what that profile of person is, what are they skilled at? What are the hard skills? What are the soft skills? What is their knowledge base? Or are you going to teach it to them? All of these things play into an organizational model. As you grow the company, what leadership roles will there be? What's going to happen is when you hire really, really talented people, they're going to grow into leadership roles or push you out of leadership roles. And that's going to create some good tension if you don't mind growing, some bad tension if you do mind giving people the reins and allowing them to lead as well.
And I think this is really important for the founder and any of the earliest people that you bring on board, for them to understand that for the company to grow, they have to grow themselves. Right?
Yeah.
They have to grow into new positions, right? So if you're the founder, you're sales, you are operations, you are fulfillment, right?
You're doing everything.
You're accounting.
Oftentimes
right?
at the beginning, yes.
But if you want to stay in that founder role, you've got to keep growing yourself, right? You've got to grow in leadership. You have to grow in virtue. You know, you have to grow in understanding of the markets. You have to constantly be evolving because that way, as you rise, there's space for other people to fill in. And so not just you as the founder, all the other first few hires also have to understand that is you are hiring them not just for this role now, but for the future of the company.
Yeah, it's not stagnant, and especially in a growing company, if we want to grow, it requires that talent just keeps growing themselves, right? And that starts at the top, and that has to be passed on. That is you can hear just probably just in the way we talk about it. That's one of our just sort of core fundamental internal beliefs, is that we are here to allow people growth in their professional lives. We also believe that when that happens, it radically affects their personal lives as well. And that's where business really has a massive effect on society in many ways, is because when you're able to really affect people's income, and not only income, but their growth in certain ways. So you have somebody who comes in who's timid, who needs to grow in perhaps courage, or somebody who doesn't have a lot of just work life expertise, and they learn how to be more just a better judge, a more prudential judge of ideas. That's going to radically affect their life. So there's a lot there. So understand what skills and knowledge you want for people coming in, and what skills and knowledge you want them to acquire in order to grow the organization. And then perhaps what habits and mindset, and that's a deeper question. What habits and mindset do you want them to have as well? And what habits and mindset are you going to have to grow in order to obtain the goal as well? So we're going pretty deep on that. Let's okay.
I think we went.
Did we jump past one?
Yep.
Oh, assessing you as an asset. So, and we again alluded to this a little earlier, but really assessing, okay, you are your own lead generation strategist, your own organizational behavior guru within your organization. You are the person who's going to ultimately determine most times what you're spending on, all of this sort of stuff. You are the one who's going to get excited about what you're producing and what it's going to actually bring in terms of revenue. And so really having a sober look at who you are currently, and I mentioned knowledge, skills, habits that you're going to need in order to grow, and how are you going to go obtain more of these in order to accelerate the growth. Your company will grow to the degree that you grow. And so what books do I need to read? What conferences do I need to attend? Who do I need to hang out with in order to do that? I cannot understate the tremendous value of surrounding yourself with really great thinkers, with great literature, with great ideas, and immersing yourself in that. And that's going to keep you very sort of young in your approach to business, right? And that's what, frankly, for me is part of the most exciting, really the most exciting part of growing these businesses, is that I'm tremendously interested and gaining information at a faster pace than I was even 15 years ago.
Yeah. And I think there's also, it's different, this mindset, this growth mindset, right? Which is a book.
Yeah.
Growth mindset is that it's not that you got a degree, you got your master's from this prestigious institution, and then you're just going to get a job and that's it. I mean, the entrepreneur says, I have to continue learning. I have to keep growing, rather than I've got this degree. Now I'm set. I've got the job. I can just execute on the job. I don't need to learn anymore.
Yep.
I'll do on the job learning, right? With an entrepreneur, it's, I've got to grow. I've got to go outside of what's happening in my business right now. I've got to carve out time to learn, to read, to, speak with other mentors.
You got to get game. Like you cannot, people will not follow you if you're not a lifelong learner. It's just the reality. Every great leader who has left great companies in amazing places and allowed those companies to flourish after them has been someone who's been really voracious about learning and about growth on themselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
So look those people up. I will. This next slide is from there, Alex Avard. He's got a couple books on just leadership and sort of the things, what I think oftentimes we think of sort of soft things that you need to grow in, but really it's a question of habit. And he talks about these classical virtues: humility, magnanimity, prudence, justice, fortitude, self-control. These are, you go back and read the Stoics, ancient philosophy, you'll run into all of this stuff. If you've taken any ancient philosophy course, you'll run into this. And what I love about Alex's stuff is he takes this and translates it into basically how to apply this stuff in your own personal life, in your own professional life as well. And so I think one of the things that's really been impactful for me and my growth has been reading his stuff and using some of his paradigms as a way to look at my business as well. So just a recommendation, book recommendation, anything by Alex Avard, or anything that talks about sort of the classical virtues, and applying those to business has been one of the things that has accelerated our growth and has allowed us to coach people, because usually that something that is lacking in a person's performance is usually something that can be tied back to a lack of a good habit in some way, right? And that's all virtue is good habits, good things done habitually over time that become part of the person as well. So the last sort of piece here that I wanted to get into, and I alluded to this in its acronym earlier, the SWOT analysis. And SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So once you've put together your business plan and you've got it and you're excited about it, and you can't wait to show it to your friends, before you do that, sit it on the desk for a day and come back to it with a clear head and look at it and do this analysis. Look at what strengths am I coming to here to this business with, to this enterprise with? What weaknesses are going to leave me exposed? Mm-hmm. What opportunities do I have in doing this? What opportunities are there in the marketplace? What opportunities are there for me and for other people that I envision being part of this journey? And what threats exist? These can be market threats. These can be, what threat do I pose as well? And I think any great leader also understands where their weak spots are. And in acknowledging that, it helps you build a company that covers some of your blind spots as well, some of your weak spots, some of the things that you're not naturally gifted at. And that even if you worked really, really hard at it, if I worked really, really hard, Mike, I'm not going to be the CFO that you are. That comes very naturally to you. So,
right. No, and you wonder, like you wish that Blockbuster had done this, when like Netflix was coming on.
Yeah.
They'd done a SWOT analysis, Well,
I think they did. And they went, that'll never catch on. They didn't really analyze it very well.
Yeah. So they didn't, I guess they didn't really know themselves at the same time.
Yep. So that I think is the last little bit of it. And we'll just end with the dates to remember. So, everybody,
these are also on the website, kilnergroup.com/scholarship. All of these dates are on the website. So
you don't have to listen to this whole thing in order to get them again.
So
great. But while we're here, drill into your mind, put it on your calendar. November 17th is the initial application deadline. So details on how to submit the application online. December 5th is when we will have chosen the finalists. December 28th, we're going to have those finalists present live in front of the judges. And again, those judges we're doing podcasts with, so you get some insight into how they've built their businesses, which is kind of a really cool, it's an idea that we came up with not very long ago. And it's been one of the most fulfilling parts of putting this whole project together for the scholarship. And I think you all are going to glean an enormous amount of information from there. I think, you could go to class for an entire semester and not get out what we've gotten out of our first 3.
Yeah, some tremendous founders and early stage startups to talk about.
And then January 6th, we will announce the winner, and that person will get $10,000 towards their education, which we're just super excited about. We really are. I can't wait to see some of the ideas that come out of this. And it's kind of fun to make it a competition as well. So Mike, thanks for being on with me.
Yeah. Thank you, Pat.